to like, comment, and subscribe as we continue here. And we're going to get into the final section here. Rashad Mccants, crazy, terrible, and wild takes. Rashad Mccants is a co-host on Gilbert Arenas' Gil's Arena podcast show. That's on YouTube. I believe it's on Fubu Sports. And he says the most wildest shit in the past couple of weeks, or the past couple of months since he's been on this. Just crazy takes. And he had this whole back and forth with Miko Grimes. Basically, what leadership was and how good you were and the ability to talk basketball, and basically demeaning her in that sense of saying, hey, you can't say that I'm not a scorer on that level as you and stuff like that. You can go back and watch the clip. But just being controversial in terms of the basketball world and stuff like that. The first thing that he said that was wild was, my Lebanon team has a chance to beat the Denver Nuggets, who just won the championship. And Gilbert Arenas snapped and said, you ain't winning against those Nuggets. Your team will lose by 200, basically going back and forth. And Rashad Mccants was saying, I have a chance to do that. And that Lebanon team, I looked up, and he averaged 25 points for that team. Cool, very productive overseas. I'm not going to diminish that. But then I looked at the team record, and his team finished 8-16. So that 8-16 team that was under 500 in Lebanon is going to turn around and beat the defending champions, the Denver Nuggets, with Nikola Jokic, the MVP, multiple-time MVP, Finals MVP, Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., all those guys. That's who you're going to beat when your team wasn't even over 500 in Lebanon? Just wild shit from him. You can watch the clips. Just wild shit from this guy. Moving on, probably one of the more entertaining things. Basically, Pat Bev said there was some back and forth or whatever the case may be, and Pat Bev said, did you hear about the story between me and Rashad Mccants? And apparently in 2012, they both had a training camp invite to work out for the Los Angeles Lakers. And Pat Bev allegedly basically said, hey, I made you quit. And Rashad Mccants, of course, Pat Beverley then came to Gilbert Arenas' show in studio across from Rashad Mccants. I believe Brandon Jennings was there as well. Kenyon Martin was there as well. And Rashad Mccants basically said, you didn't make me quit. I stopped my workout. And Pat Bev was like, yo, we was playing one-on-one. What are you talking about? Like, you stopped playing. And Rashad Mccants basically said, yo, I already had my spot guaranteed by Mitch Kupchak. There was a UNC connection between the two. He got him to work out to come in and work out for the team. And basically saying, I only stopped the workout because I had a grade 2 ankle sprain. Kenyon Martin, sitting next to him, was so disgusted with Rashad Mccants over the course of this interview. And Rashad Mccants goes, hey, you're a point guard. Why am I going to work out against a point guard? And everyone else is in the room like, it don't matter who you're working out against. You kill the workout. You guarantee your spot. You kill the workout and you work out hard because you're trying out for an NBA team. And everyone's looking at Rashad Mccants crazy because he's like, oh, I'm not going to battle against a point guard. You didn't make me quit. Yada, yada, yada. I got injured. And just all this stuff comes out, and I'm not an NBA player. I'm not. But just looking at from what the league has been in all these years, guys get hurt, teams keep him, whatever the case may be. But he had an ankle sprain. Why wouldn't the team just sign you and keep you and rehabilitate you if you were that important? You had this UNC connect inside, all the stuff in your favor. Why wouldn't that work out for you? And just the battle with Patrick Beverley is highly entertaining, and Brandon Jennings in there, and Kenyon Martin gets up and leaves at one point. But everyone is just dying with laughter because they can't believe this shit. Like, he is wild as shit. And moving on to the last terrible take of Rashad Mccants that I've heard. calling Gregg Popovich overrated as a coach. Rashad Mccants. Now, I'm not going to discredit Rashad Mccants. He went to UNC. I believe he was all ACC, I believe 2 times. Won a national championship in his junior year. Was a 20-point per game scorer in college. In the NBA, he was a journeyman a little bit, role player, scored 15 points. Cool, you made it to the NBA. You're playing overseas. Never going to discredit that. But then he says this shit about Gregg Popovich being overrated as a coach. And I've heard this take from multiple people before. And he was on the verge of saying, hey, he had nothing but Hall of Fame players. And that for the past 4 years, he's been under 500. He's lost Kawhi Leonard. And that coaches with losing 4 years in a row would be fired. And everyone's looking at him crazy because it's like, what are you talking about? Because they just lost Kawhi Leonard under those circumstances, and now they're in a rebuild. Why are you expecting this team to be over 500 when they're not trying to win and trying to blame the coach for that? And he's like, well, you're supposed to have your best player. You're supposed to be able to coach these guys up, all this stuff like that. And it's like, whoa. So we're going to discredit everything Popovich has done the prior 20 years because of the last 4 years. And when you look at Popovich, and he was saying how he had Tony Parker, how he had Manu Ginobili, how he had Tim Duncan, he had Hall of Fame players. And everyone is looking at him like, yes, he did. But a lot of those guys weren't projected to be Hall of Famers. Of course, Tim Duncan was the standout. He was the first overall pick in the 97 draft. Tony Parker was the end of the 99 draft, I believe. Wasn't projected much. People thought he was just a French player overseas. Nobody really thought much of him. Manu Ginobili was an all-time player in Argentina, but was a second-round pick, I think 52, in 2001. Stayed overseas for like a year or so. So no one really projected those two guys to be Hall of Famers. And when you look at what Tim Duncan was, he was a day one guy. I call him a day one. Day one guys have a head up over a lot of people. Like when you're day one, you're the best player on your team from day one. So, but to just discredit Gregg Popovich, who has created a system around Tim Duncan, aging David Robinson, around Tony Parker, around Manu Ginobili, to look at all the stuff Gregg Popovich has created with that defense and building that defensive system to squeeze everything towards the sidelines, force everything down the middle towards Tim Duncan and David Robinson. All these things that were great. Of course, he had the good players that develop into great players and stuff like that. But to just sit there and shit on a guy's legacy and say he's overrated as a coach when he has 5 championships, when he's created a system, and a lot of the times during his era, when guys were hurt or when they were getting rest, he got the most out of his role players, his bench players, Boris Diaw, Brent Barry, Steven Jackson, who craps on Pop a little bit because he thinks that they picked Tony Parker over him, and rightfully so. But that's a crazy ass shit to say that Gregg Popovich is overrated when I believe just over the course of the NBA history, he has been able to get the most out of less. In terms of, well, Eric Spoelstra is now creeping up on that if we just see his couple finals runs. But just in general, to develop players, Kawhi Leonard, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, and just all the developments of these teams. And it's just like, I just don't understand that. Nobody says that about Red Auerbach, who had Bill Russell, John Havlicek, Sam Jones, guys of that nature. No one says that about Phil Jackson, who had Michael Jordan, who's arguably the greatest player of all time, or in consideration. Scottie Pippen, top 50 player. Dennis Rodman, top 50 player, one of the best rebounders of all time. Shaq, Kobe Bryant, who people have over Duncan in their rankings a lot, which I think Tim Duncan is ranked higher. But no one ever says about those guys. Nobody ever says that about them. But for some reason, Gregg Popovich gets these shots because he's in San Antonio, he's in a smaller market, he doesn't have as many distractions, all these things that people say with the bullshit that comes with Gregg Popovich. And it's like, fuck that. You can't say that about Gregg Popovich. Gregg Popovich, in my opinion, is the best coach in NBA history. And that might be blasphemous to some because Phil Jackson and Red Auerbach have more rings. But I think Gregg Popovich is the best coach in the NBA because he's just been able to develop. He's been able to keep going. He's been able to keep clicking. And he's found a new gem in Victor Wembanyama. So we'll see what happens with Gregg Popovich, and he's able to, how long he's going to be able to stay around, if he's going to be able to rejuvenate the Spurs franchise at this point. But Rashad Mccants is saying some wild, crazy, terrible, and wild takes when it comes to basketball. And this is one of the things where people say, people like me who just come on and just try to talk basketball shouldn't talk basketball because we never played. Rashad Mccants is showing you the prime example that you could have played basketball, had a lot of experience in college, had some experience in the NBA, playing overseas, come back and then say some wild shit as a person who plays basketball day to day. So I'm not going to negate anybody from talking the game of basketball, but when you say blasphemous shit, and people go at Kendrick Perkins for the shit that he be saying, and you can kind of understand, at least understand where Kendrick Perkins is talking from a basketball standpoint. Rashad Mccants takes, no. We can't do that. No, he's talking crazy. But that will do it for this episode of the Basketball Soapbox, episode 58. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe as we continue here. I'm going to try to get back into the Soapbox summer, analyze that Michael Jordan Bulldoze series as well. FIBA basketball is going on. I think USA just beat Montenegro on Friday. So I believe they're 7-0 in the FIBA World Cup. So that's going on. NBA season is going to be picking up. I'm going to be doing an NBA preview on the Eastern and Western Conference, of course, as we get closer to the season. A lot of moves that happen there, coaching, moving, all that stuff like that. Try to do some more things in that nature. Maybe have a guest or two on as well. As well as continue with the Ring Takes podcast, which has been taking off and getting a lot of support on that. Likes, comments, and subscribers off of that. Payback just happened last night. All Out is going to happen today at the time of this recording. A lot of stuff going on there in that section where CM Punk has quit. Has been fired by Tony Khan in AEW. I think he quit, but just in general, a lot of stuff going on. A lot of stuff that's going to be picking up as we get into the fall season here, especially with basketball, wrestling picking up. And you can't wait till the start of the NBA season, of course. But going to try to have some more content for you guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for joining me on this one.